Well, thank you so much for having me and coming to this session today. I do love working with children and families. That's one of my specialties at Foundations, and I love to help families have resources and things to do with your children. So I'm hoping to get you a lot of resources today and different strategies for helping the children that you work with or your own children at home. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to help you get a sense on what it would be like to live with an addicted parent. And so I'm going to show you a short little video clip of a girl named Victoria, and I want you to get a sense on what it's like from her. And hopefully she's coming on soon. Well, I'll tell you a little bit about her, and hopefully she'll pop up on the screen as I do it. Victoria is 14 years old, and she was born 15 weeks early. So she was a preemie baby, and her mom was addicted to heroin. And so she struggled from the get-go, from the start. And so she was with her mother for 10 years, and her mom was in active addiction with heroin for 10 years. And so she experienced neglect. She wasn't fed. She had to get her own food. She didn't get any type of medical care or any type of things like that. And so she was pretty much on her own for much of her life. And so there was an uncle in her life that was helpful to her, and he would kind of support her when her mom was sleeping. And so her mom actually even sent her out for a drug deal, where she had to take the drug to someone else. Can you imagine the scariness of that? And so she went through a lot. So she had a lot of loss. She had a loss from, ended up having her parents leaving her mom and going to live with her grandparents, so she had that loss. And also, her uncle ended up dying from a drug overdose. So the one man who was a support to her, a father figure, he ended up dying. So that was a big grief process for her. And she also had a lot of self-blame. She blamed herself. She thought if she could be
Tori Brinkman has always been a survivor, born 15 weeks early, a tiny pound and a half. And that was just the beginning of her struggle. For the first 10 years of her life, she lived with a mother addicted to heroin. Their history together shows how savage the grip of addiction can be. Today, Tori is a remarkably composed 14-year-old telling her story, her way. What do you remember about those early years and your mom?
She never ate. She'd have maybe a Coke a day, no water, and then go right back to bed. And she'd never take care of me, never feed me. I had to feed myself. I consider myself as the parent and my mom the kid.
Do you think your mom sold drugs?
Yeah, I know she did.
She got in trouble for that?
Yeah. One time, I think I was around 7 or 8, she actually made me do a drug deal for her.
A drug deal? Like, what did she ask you to do?
She puts either heroin or cocaine in a napkin or something, and she said, run up to that house, go get the money, and give this to him.
Tori says she never got any health care growing up.
None until I was 10. Never went to the dentist. I'd never been to the dentist before.
What about a pediatrician, doctor? No?
Nothing.
Her mom told Tori not to tell anyone about the things she saw in their home, but Tori would call her grandparents when they ran out of food. 3 years ago, Lillian and Richard were awarded legal custody.
When she first came to live with us permanently, she was blaming herself. Maybe if I was better, Mom wouldn't have done the drugs.
And it wasn't just Tori's mom abusing heroin in their home. It was also her uncle, the closest person Tori had to a father figure. What happened to your uncle?
He passed away November 20th, 2015 from a drug overdose.
Heroin?
Mm-hmm.
That must have been super hard for you.
Yeah, because, I mean, he basically took care of me instead of my mom. Like, if my mom was asleep, he'd take care of me. And so it was just, it was sad. Hang on.
You want a Kleenex? I have one.
I got one over here.
Okay. Come here.
This is really hard stuff to talk about.
At 14 years old, Tori has seen enough pain for a lifetime, making her spirit and attitude today all the more impressive. Here's a big question.
Okay.
Why are you talking to us?
Because I want to spread awareness of how drugs have not only affected my life, but have probably affected a lot of other kids' lives, and I want to just, help people.
Tori's mother knows that she's sharing this story. She's been sober now for 3 years. She's working 2 jobs. Tori tells us that she's proud of her mother, and the two of them see each other
So I thought that was a really powerful video to get us centered on why we're really here. We want to help people like her and all those children affected. And so that leads right into adverse childhood experiences. Some of you may have heard about these with a study that was out. From 1995 to 1997, there was a study out on 17,000 adults. They had a physical and also a survey they took on what their experiences were like in childhood and also what their behaviors were like now and what their health is like now. And so they found that 26.9% of those 17,000 people had substance abuse in the home growing up. It's a lot of people growing up with substance abuse. And also they found that these are the different types of things that they were experiencing. The different categories are abuse, all the different types of abuse, neglect, and household dysfunction. That can be anything from mental illness to a parent that has gone to prison, or a mother with a mental illness, or substance abuse, divorce. These are all kinds of things that you would find in a household dysfunction. So anyone who said that on their survey, that they had these types of ACEs, the more ACEs that you have, the more likely you are to have different problems in your health, as far as cancer, stroke, heart attacks, different types of behaviors that you might consider risky behaviors, that they get into substance abuse themselves as they grow up and get older, and so they are having a lot of obesity and things like that. So this study really showed the effects of the type of things that these children are experiencing as they're growing up are moving along with them into their adulthood. But the great thing is that if you can get to these children young and you can provide a mentorship or a family friend or somebody who can love on them, the effects can be reversed through a relationship with another person. And we all know that's because God is love, and when we reflect God's love, it's very healing. And so I want to show you another quick clip. This is about toxic stress and what happens with children when they experience these types of things at home. So hopefully this will go on.
Learning to deal with stress is an important part of healthy development. When experiencing stress, the stress response system is activated. The body and brain go on alert. There's an adrenaline rush, increased heart rate, and an increase in stress hormone levels. When the stress is relieved after a short time, or a young child receives support from caring adults, the stress response winds down and the body quickly returns to normal. In severe situations, such as ongoing abuse and neglect, where there is no caring adult to act as a buffer against the stress response stays activated. Even when there is no apparent physical harm, the extended absence of response from adults can activate the stress response system. Constant activation of the stress response overloads developing systems, with serious, lifelong consequences for the child. This is known as toxic stress. Over time, this results in a stress response system set permanently on high alert. In the areas of the brain dedicated to learning and reasoning, the neural connections that comprise brain architecture are weaker and fewer in number. Science shows that the prolonged activation of stress hormones in early childhood can actually reduce neural connections in these important areas of the brain at just the time when they should be growing new ones. Toxic stress can be avoided if we ensure that the environments in which children grow and develop are nurturing, stable, and engaging.
So you can see your actual brain is changed when you're not getting these connections and these types of relationships with your children. And so this toxic stress, it's like these children are on this high alert state. No wonder they're getting anxious and angry, because they don't know how to deal with this state of alert. And so that's why I said it's so important to get those meaningful relationships with them as they go along. So you have different physical problems. Their experience as they're younger around an addicted parent affects them. And this is taken from Dr. Jim Berg's Losses, Lies, and Lust model. And this shows you just what is happening in the heart when they get these kind of experiences. And so the beginning circle is losses. So when children have a loss in their life, it might be the loss of a parent's attention because they're on drugs, or it could be a loss, somebody dying. That sometimes leads to us going, I think this is one. There we go. Losses turns into lies that they believe. And so they might believe lies about themselves, that they're no good. They might believe lies about God, that God is punishing me, he's not happy with me. They might believe lies about the world, like that somehow that God makes these rules up, and that they're just too hard, it's no fun, I shouldn't just follow God's rules. And so those are types of lies they might believe. And this is happening in the heart, so that's the parentheses. And then the lies turns into, I need some way of coping with all these lies I'm believing. And a lot of times these children will then go to their lusts or their desires. Rather than going to God, they're going to go to things that are pleasurable or comfort them or numb things out. And just like adults do the same types of things. And so this is a good model that would be good for a teenager. If you're taking them through this, I'm going to show you another model that I created that's more for younger children. But this would be more for adults and for teenagers. So then the next part is, if you have losses and then they hear God's truth, then you can counteract those lies that they're hearing. They believe God's truth, they do God's truth, and that leads to fulfillment and blessedness. And so that's where we as biblical counselors, as parents who love the Lord, mentors, that's where our job comes in, to help these children know the truth rather than having them believe the lies. So this is the model that I created. And so we start with my life, and your life is the train. So you tell the children that their life is like the train. And so you're going through life, and then, oh man, I get to the losses spot where something happens where I'm really upset. And so these bring on the hard feelings in the middle with the question mark, and the person's sitting there, they're like, oh, what am I going to do now? And so a lot of these children, if they're living with an addictive parent, they have no one to help them with the hard feelings. They have no one to help them with the false beliefs, so they don't know what to do. And so often they'll go down this track where they're going to believe the lies, they're going to follow what they like, what they want, and that's where they're going to get their comfort from. I've had a lot of kids in my counseling office that are addicted to video games because that numbs everything out. They don't have to worry about their life, and so they're on video games all the time. Also, I've had kids that are overweight because they're eating too much, or they're watching YouTube. That's the biggest thing now. I'm hearing lots of teens on YouTube all the time, and they're watching all these videos that are terrible for them. And so our job is to move them the other track up to God's truth. And I'm going to be teaching you how to do that as we go along. So what is your train pulling? So here's the train. You want to teach the child that the engine is like their heart. And your heart is your thoughts, your feelings, your desires, and your choices. So you teach them, I think, I feel, I want, and I will. That's what's going on in your heart. And that's who you really are. And that's where all those take place. So you are the engine, your heart's the engine. And then you ask them, who is the engineer? Who is driving your train? Most of them will say me. And then later on, after I've gone through all this, hopefully they'll give me another answer. So who is driving your train today? Who's influencing your thoughts, feelings, desires, and choices? That's what I would ask. So with the engine, you have the cars behind you, and you're pulling life's experiences. Some of your life experiences are losses. Some of your life experiences are gains. So you're pulling those along with your heart, interpreting all these things that are happening. So for the younger children, I would talk about thumbs up or thumbs down experiences. thumbs up might be, I went to, would you like to go to the amusement park with your mom or dad? Yeah, so that'd be a thumbs up experience. Would you like to have to be sick in bed all week? No, that's a thumbs down experiences. So that's how I would explain losses and gains to them. And for adolescents, I would use the terms losses and gains. Gains is something that you gain something from, like you might gain somebody's love or attention or wisdom from being around them. Loss is something that's kind of breaking you down. So I might give them a cart like this, and I'm going to have these up here. You can take one before you go. So I might give them that in at home or in the office, and I'd say, draw the things that are thumbs up to you. What are some thumbs up experiences that you've liked? What are some gains for you in your life that you would like to happen over and over again? So I would have them draw it or write words depending on what they like to do. This is giving you a sense on, is there anything in this train car? Maybe they can't even think of one. Or are there a lot of things in this train car? So it gives you a real quick view on where is this child coming from. And then I would explain a loss like this when we go through hurts and hard times. And just like trains pull those cars that can be heavy, well, our burdens, our losses can be pretty heavy too. They can weigh heavy on our minds, in our hearts, can make us feel sick, get headaches, get physical symptoms. And so I would explain it like that. And so there's a lot of different losses that we can have. A loss of relationship might be a child has a friendship and they have an argument and then their friend doesn't want to play with them anymore. A loss of love could be if a child is at home with an addictive parent and they are not getting any attention. Well, their loss is I don't have love in my life. I don't have attention. A loss of opportunity could be a child whose parent might be sober and they're like, oh, we're going to go out, and they might be starting to feel a little bit guilty and be like, oh, we're going to go out to the park tomorrow. Tomorrow comes, park never happens. That's a loss of opportunity. Could be something at school where they wanted to sign up for a sport, but mom or dad can't drive them back and forth because they're at home in bed. That could be a loss of opportunity. Loss of purpose. That could be if the child is putting all of their identity in what they can do in their grades and doing well in sports, and then they fail. Well, now I don't have a purpose in life because I can't even do this right. Or mom and dad at home are saying you're a failure, you're no good. Well, that's a loss of purpose because they don't feel like they have a purpose in life. And loss of special items, you'll see that a lot when children are moving from foster care, go into the foster care system. All their stuff is left behind, and here they are in this new environment, and their favorite stuffed animal that brought them comfort at home when mom and dad were absent is not there anymore. You imagine your favorite stuffed animal that you carried around at home all your life. Now it's not there. That's the loss of a special item. So this is just some of the things that a child might have. So I want you to think about what are the losses that you've had in your life. And I'm going to ask you a couple questions and see what you would fill out this cart with. So, did anyone ever die that was close to you? Did anyone ever have to leave did you ever have to leave your family and go somewhere else? Did anyone ever leave you? Loss of purpose. Did you ever feel like you failed at something? Like your grades or sports? Did anyone ever tell you're no good or you can't do anything right? Loss of love. I wish my mom, my dad listened to me. I wish they hugged me. I wish they cared. Did you ever lose something that was important to you? What happened to it? Was your house flooded? Did you have a fire? Was it taken away from you? What about an opportunity? Did you ever have the possibility to do something that you're really looking forward to, and then it wasn't there? It stopped? These are the kind of things our children are experiencing. Now, what was that like for you to go through that? I know it went kind of quickly. That was pretty hard probably to think about those things. Imagine now the child trying to deal with these losses without anybody around. So that brings up a lot of hard feelings. So I'm going to help you have some ideas on how to help children who are traveling through hard feelings. So we're right now on the question mark, trying to figure out these hard feelings. So the first thing that I would do with children who are having hard feelings is I want to try to figure out what's going on in their minds. And they're not just going to go sit there and talk to me. And so I try to do fun things with them that will help them with that. So the first thing I'm going to do is showing you using colors. Then I'm going to show you how to use a dollhouse, and then using sand and miniatures. So this is one of my absolute favorite activities. I do this pretty much with everybody who comes in the counseling office. Is I take the colors and I connect the colors with an emotion word. And so those are just the ones I use. You could have the child actually make their own color code. Some of the older kids, like the teenagers, like to make their own code. Some of them just like to use mine. And so I would say, draw each member of your family. I might take 3 or 4 sessions to do this. So they would draw their family member, and then they would color the person the way they felt about them. And so if you have a lot of that emotion about that person, you color a lot of that person, that color. So if I had a lot of sadness, I would color a lot of blue in this picture. If I had a lot of happiness, I would color a lot of yellow. If I have a little part of it, I could say maybe just the shoe. Or maybe you want to put a hat on the person, maybe just the visor of the hat. And so it shows kids, you can see right from looking at their picture, their sense of how much sadness they have. They can't tell you that, but they can draw it. And this has done amazing things when I've done it in the office. And so it shows me a quick picture. And you also are having a conversation with them as you go through it. Oh, I noticed that you colored a lot of green. Can you tell me about that? And you also want to be careful. Sometimes younger ones don't know proportions. And so what you think is more of one is not what they think. So I might ask them, so which color did you use the most of? Because I've had that happen where they don't really know. What they thought is not what I was thinking. You could do this with adults too, and children. You don't use the doll cutout. You have them draw their own. Or I've had it where they had a whole picture, and I say, draw your life, and use the colors of how you feel. They've done some really amazing pictures with that, and it really gives you a sense on what's going on. So using a dollhouse, sand, and miniatures. So this is my office. I have a dollhouse, and those things on the top are all different occupations. They've come in handy. Any toys my children don't use, they end up in the counseling office. And so I often will sit down with the younger ones, and I'll just play in the dollhouse. And I'll say, can you play out what it's like in your family? Can you show me what it's like to be at home with mom and dad? And they'll play it out for you. They won't tell you it, but they'll play it out. And you can see what's happening, and you can ask questions as you go along. Some of the older kids still like the dollhouse. You'd be surprised. And they'll be like, they'll like do funny things in the dollhouse. I'm like, oh, do you want to play in it today? Sure. So, and also on the right-hand side, this is my small collection of miniatures. I want to expand this. So this is my first attempt. And what you do is you take, if you're not a counselor and you have a sandbox at home, go out in your sandbox and have toys available from your house or out near the sandbox. Or you can just get some kinetic sand from the store, and I just put it in a Tupperware container. And so what you do is you have them go and choose things. I have a little basket there. And you have them choose things that would remind you of themselves. Like, so you could do something that would tell about them, or a picture. Or you could do things that would tell about their life. And so what I tell them, I said, it's like you're drawing a picture in the sand. But instead of drawing what you want, you're taking a miniature and you're sticking it in the sand. So that's like, okay, I just drew Tigger in the sand. And then they can move the sand around, and they show different pictures. If the child is pretty creative, they come up with some pretty creative things. And so you can use that to have them tell about their family. What's their life like? You watch and see, what do they pick for their mom and dad? I had a child who picked the Hulk that was really angry as the father. That shows a lot. I've had, then at the end, I always ask them, where's God in this picture? And this is my favorite part, because they will and I'll ask them, what would you choose for Jesus? What would you choose for God? So sometimes they'll choose, most of the kids I've had choose positive things. But I'm also looking to see, are they choosing something negative for God? Is God not even in this tray? Maybe he's not even in their picture. Most of the kids, thankfully, I've seen them, they'll put God right in the middle of their problem. And so it's pretty neat to see where they put God. And again, you're looking for the lies so that you can then have a conversation on what the truth is. The miniatures have been really helpful as a tool. And you can do that at home. You could just have them take their toys. If you don't have a sandbox, just like rope out an area of your floor and have them make a picture on the floor with putting their toys on the ground. I've had teenagers. You can do this with adults. I actually enjoy doing it more with teens because they're a little more higher level thinking, and you can use it with couples. You can use it with some people who are really artsy and have a hard time describing something for you. They'll do it in the sand, so it's helpful to that too. So some of the children that you'll have will be going through anxiety. And so I created this book. When I was working with children, I found there weren't a lot of resources that have God's truth for the answer to healing. That includes specific counseling helps throughout the book. So I created Anxious Abby and the Camp Trust Challenge. And this gives a picture of anxiety. And anxiety is like a backpack. And it's weighing heavy on your back. And I show the kids that we have different heaviness of worries. And this is a worry character that I use. This is the sleepover worry. And so I would say sometimes we have small worries, and that would be the small book. Sometimes we have medium-sized worries, and I would ask them, what's your small worry? What's your medium-sized worry? I'll put that in, and I'll say, sometimes we have really big, heavy worries. Do you have any of those? And I'll put it in the backpack. And what's really even helpful is sometimes I'll have them go over to the bookshelf, and I'll say, can you pick out a book that shows how heavy your worry is? That's really helpful, because they'll pick the telephone book, or they'll pick the smaller one. And so then you have them carry it around in the office. You have them put it on their back. How does that feel? That's pretty heavy. And you have them go around and feel how heavy it is on their back, showing a sense of just what anxiety is like. And then once they got a little tired, then you say, okay, are you ready to take it off? Yes. All right, so then they take it off. How does that feel? Oh, that feels a lot better. And so you have them pray, talk to the Lord. Lord wants our burdens. He doesn't want us to carry that really heavy backpack around. He wants us to give our burdens to Him. He'll take care of it. He knows the best way to do it. I had one child once in the counseling session when they came. He when I came in here, I was really heavy and weighed down, but when I left, I feel so much better. That was really rewarding that day. So it gives it the physical sense. Kids need that action. And you can have them do that at home if they're really worried. Have them pack their backpack, pray, take it off, and that way they can have that physical piece in it. There's things throughout this book that are counseling helps that you can do with the children. They're called Your Turn activities. And you want to stop, and you can do the Your Turn activities. It gives you Bible study, art activities that you can do with the children that I've done in the counseling office. So this is one example. And you can also do a backpack like this. You can do a craft. And I just used strips of paper on the back, made a pocket, and then you can have the children do their own worries. This is the public speaking worry. That's my worry. And so, pretty ironic, right? And so I did that worry, and then you have them put their worries in their backpack, and then you have them take them out, pray to God, and then I made up a truth card. This is Isaiah 41:10. You can make one of these on your own, and you have them replace the truth with take the worries out and replace it with the truth. So you can do a craft like that. With older kids, make it a little more older kid-like craft. But most of the kids really enjoy doing the backpack. A lot of kids will also be going through anger. And so there's a couple ways of dealing with anger. I have Jax's tail twitches. I use a lot of children's books in the counseling office. This is about Jax, who he got angry at something, and his whole family ended up getting angry, even the adults. So this is a great book to show that not only kids get angry, the adults get angry, and in the end they all kind of come together, pray pray about it and ask God for support. And in the back of this book, they have different backpack Bible verses that you can use. So that's a good one to use. And also, this is more for the older kids. It's called Young Peacemakers. This is a great conflict resolution book, and it teaches you how to deal with conflict. And that's what the picture is right there. It talks about how conflict is a slippery slope. We want to be in the work it out wedge, but we often either go to the attack mode, where we're fighting and attacking, or we're going towards the escape mode, where we're running away from our problems. And that's one of the strategies they use in here. One thing I really like to use is they help kids understand their heart motivations and why are they getting angry. So it's a really great book about that. And they have all these different student activity books that you can print out, and you can do the different things together with your older kids. So it's a great conflict resolution, and it's all completely God-centered. And if you want a book for a parent that really shows a biblical viewpoint of anger, Heart of Anger will help with that. That tells you how to work with the child and help them work through their anger with that. So all these books will be up here at the end if you'd like to see them. So when you have anger, it leads to unforgiveness, bitterness. And so one book that I really found helpful is called The Friend Who Forgives. And it's all about the true story about how Jesus failed. Not Jesus, sorry. Skip that one. How Peter failed and Jesus forgave. Definitely want to get that one right. And so I would ask the child before I read this story, I feel angry when or because, and I am angry with. So I wanted to get a sense on what is their anger and who are they angry about. There's a lot of angry kids, angry at the system for taking them away from their parent, angry with the parents for leaving them, angry at themselves because they think they did something wrong. So you really have to address anger. And so you would have them write a list down, and then you can have them read this book to them. And if you have the parent in the counseling session, have the parent read the book, if they're willing, because then have the child sit on the parent's lap. You're getting them to connect, and you're modeling a bonding time. Not a lot of parents, unfortunately, have the time to sit and read books these days, and so you're providing that in the office. If they're not, you can just read it. And so throughout the book, it talks about how Peter just kept failing Jesus over and over again, and Jesus kept forgiving him over and over, even when Peter denied him. And that can be, they might feel that way as that their parent is denying them. They don't really care about them. And so that shows Jesus as the model for forgiveness. And Colossians scripture is a great thing. I've done this with children. It's really been helpful with one of my older kids. It talks about how put on then as God's chosen ones, holy and beloved, compassionate hearts, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience, bearing with one another. And if one has a complaint against another, forgiving each other as the Lord has forgiven you, so that you must also forgive. So this is talking about putting on. So I use the example of a coat. When you're cold, you put on a coat that helps you feel better. Well, it's really hard to forgive, right? So I teach them about how forgiveness doesn't mean that what the person did was okay. Forgiveness means that you are giving this situation to God to take care of. You're saying, this was not right. That's okay. This was not right, what you did to me, but I'm going to let God take care of it. I'm not going to try to seek revenge. And so, but sometimes we need help doing that, so you do the put-ons. So I say to them, okay, now let's look at the list of people you said you were angry with and the situations. What would you put on to help you forgive that person? So would you need to put on kindness? Would you need to have compassion on them and kind of understand where they're coming from? Would you have to be humble and think, well, I make mistakes, this person made a mistake too? And this has worked out really well with one of my clients. And they chose different things for different people that would help them. So what would you need to put on for forgiveness? So are you on the right track? this is the part where you're choosing. Am I going towards believing lies and following my desires, or am I going to obey God's truth? So a lot of times, again, the children are going to be believing lies and false beliefs. So you have to get to the bottom of that. And I would use one of those examples from before to get them to express that to you. And I already went over this about believing something wrong about God, about themselves, or maybe even God's rules. So this is something I would do with the kids. And this would be, I would give them a piece of paper like this. You could just give a regular piece of paper. And you would have them draw things about yourself and see what they draw. Is it truthful? Are they happy with who they are as a person, or are they not happy? What are they drawing? Is it positive? Is it negative? And also, tell me about God. Draw a picture about God. See what they draw. You'd be surprised with the things they'll show you from just a picture. And so then, are your desires and lusts driving you to the wrong train station? And so that's the part where we're going to the worldly ways or godly ways. So here we are. Are we going towards the worldly comforts, or are we going towards the lasting comforts train station? So if we're going towards the worldly, we're going towards our lusts. And so, but each person is tempted when he is lured and enticed by his own desire. Our children have desires too, and they, just like their parents may be drawn towards their desires, the children can go into their same footsteps. So, why do kids go to the worldly comforts train station? So, is it they want some power and control over their lives? These children who have addicted parents feel out of control. They feel powerless. They feel like they can't do anything to change their situation. They might be feeling hopeless. And so what do they go? They go somewhere where they can feel powerful. It might be a gang. It might be trying to be the best sports person or the best at grades. And prestige. They might be trying to get lots of possessions and get money. And this can lead into them dealing drugs themselves and that type of thing. They might be looking for pleasure. There's not much pleasure or happiness in their life. They want pleasure. Unfortunately, instead of going towards God's pleasure, they're going to the world's pleasure. And so that might be video games and social media and drugs and alcohol, or even pornography and sex. A lot of children, young children, are getting into pornography. I've heard of children who somebody brought it on the bus, and they showed them the magazine on the bus, on an elementary school bus. They're over at somebody else's house, and their friend has access to it. It's everywhere. It's a big problem, even for the younger ones. And so this is what you might see at a worldly train station. This is what it might look like. All these signs popping up, trying to get our kids' attention. And they're going towards these things. They might even be going towards false religions, Wiccan, or all these different false religions, because they have more control, or it seems interesting to them. And so popularity. So they're looking for pleasure in the wrong places. So Ephesians 2:1-3 says, if you were dead in the trespasses and sins in which you once walked, following the course of this world, following the prince of the power of the air, the spirit that is now at work at the sons of disobedience, among whom we all once lived in the passions of our flesh, carrying out the desires of the body and the mind, and were by nature children of wrath, like the rest of mankind. So this is explaining when we get caught in the worldly train station. This is what God's word says. So we want to move them towards God's lasting comfort. And I really like this picture because I think it really shows hope. It's got the light coming out. I think that's like God, and it's like they're walking towards hope, a hopeful picture. And their train is moving towards joy, peace, healing, and hope. And that's only found when you move towards God's truth and not the lies. And so this is Matthew 7:24 to 27. Everyone then who hears these words of mine and does them will be like a wise man who built his house on the rock, and the rain fell and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat on that house. But it did not fall, because it had been founded on the rock. And everyone who hears these words of mine and does not do them will be like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. And the rains fell and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat against the house, and it fell, and it was great, and great was the fall of it. And so we're showing kids, even though we're going towards God's truth, doesn't mean that everything's going to be great. It doesn't mean that just because you know God that these bad things aren't going to happen. But what it does, these houses are a great example because it's visual for the children. And that you're going to still have the storms. But that house that has Jesus working through it, that's going to be the house that stands. And you might be in the same situation, but you're going to be able to live through it and get God's love and support through that once you go to the lasting comforts train station. In Romans 15:13, may the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace in believing, so that by the power of the Holy Spirit you may abound in hope. So that's where I got the hope and the joy. So this is a great activity. This I had taken from Jim Berg's class. And if you're interested in some of his books, I have some of them up here. They're very good biblical counseling books. But this teaches you how to do truth statements with children. I have that paper up here as well. And so when you do these truth statements, this is how you get them thinking about God. So the top truth statements are more for teens and adults, but it can be used for any ages. And the bottom ones are for more younger children. And so what you do is you say, God is, and you think of a quality of God, or you think of an action of God, or it might be a promise of God. So you have to think, who is God? What has he done? What has he promised me? Then you take it to, he does this in this fallen human condition. So the fallen human conditions are all the things that are happening in our world because it's fallen. Divorce, drugs, that type of thing. And so you put God in the picture with the fallen human condition. You connect them together. And so I want to give you an example of how to do this with a boy named Ben. He is a 7-year-old boy, and you can find his story on the Wall Street Journal YouTube. But he has been through overwhelming situations. That would be your fallen human condition, overwhelming situations. He has been, he's had a drug-addicted father that he actually witnessed unresponsive on the floor, and he couldn't pick him up. This is really sad because he always wished for muscles because he didn't have the strength to pick his dad up when he was unresponsive. And so he's also exposed to horror films because his dad used to sit him in front of the television and have him watch horror films so that he wouldn't bother him while he was doing the drugs. Very sad. So that would be overwhelming situations, fallen human condition. He also was suffering from loss and adversity because that father that I was telling you about, he ended up dying over a drug overdose. And so now he's adopted, he's with a new family, but he's mourning the loss of his dad. The fallen human condition is also uncertainty and vulnerability. A lot of these kids are uncertain, they're in vulnerable situations. And so what he normally does is he fixates on an interest, and he just does it over and over again. And then he alienates other kids, and they won't play with him because he just keeps doing his interests. And so something I would do for Ben is I would give him, so you have to choose scriptures for these children. Or if it's a teen that knows the Bible, they might be able to pick some of their own scriptures. Or what I did in a session, I had the child with a children's Bible, and I say, look for somebody in the Bible that kind of is going through something like you. And then I gave the adult I have a little book that's like counseling scriptures for adults, and had the father looking up scriptures. And then I try to get the father and the father teaching the child. So I don't want to be the teacher. I want to empower dad to teach his child. And that worked out really well. And so I might give them the Mark 4:35-4 scripture for a provision for overwhelming situations. This is going to model this truth statement right here. So God is. This is the story of when Jesus was out in the boat with the disciples and the storm came and they're all afraid. So I would say Jesus is all-powerful and in control, because this boy feels out of control. Even when I go through overwhelming times. So Jesus is all-powerful and in control even when I go through overwhelming times. So that is something you want them to remember in their minds. The second thing I would give them for the loss, I would give them John 1:33-35. And this is when Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come with her also weeping. He was deeply moved in his spirit and greatly troubled, and he said, "Where have you laid him?" They said to him, "Lord, come and see." Jesus wept. Jesus weeping with Mary and Martha. So I would use for the second one, God and an action of God. I would say Jesus cries with me, that's the action, when I am sad about my daddy dying. So that's the fallen human condition. So Jesus, what does he do? He cries with me when I am sad about my daddy dying. And the third one I would use, Isaiah 41:10. Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. This goes with the third one. God promises too. You have an essence of the promise. What's God promising? God promises to be with me and to help me play with others, even when it feels comfortable to do things I like by myself. And so you're saying his promise to you, he's going to help me play with others, even when I'm more comfortable playing by myself. And that's the fallen human condition of wanting to isolate yourself and go to your own wants and wishes. So these have been really helpful. I've given this also out for a teenager who has, for homework in high school. I said she knew her fallen human condition was having trouble with friends. And so I said, take some time, when you go home, make some of these truth statements using the scriptures and come back and show me next week. So you can have them do it on their own if you think they can handle it. But you want to give them some examples beforehand, because it's kind of hard to do on your own. So that's just different fallen human conditions. I pretty much showed those already. So here we are at the end. We are going for the joy, peace, healing, and hope. Rather than, if you're at worldly comforts, you can show that child the worldly comforts bring even more loss. So it continues the cycle. And then they continue the cycle with their family. You don't want your situation to be like what you're growing up as. Let's change this with God. And you can show them they have a choice. So these kids don't know they have a choice. You have a choice. You can steer that train up to the lasting comforts.